Here is a square side 5. The area of this square is length times breadth, which is 5 times 5, or 5 squared, which is 25. Now look at the right angled triangle and look at the squares on each of the sides. The square on the longest side, called the hypotenuse, the area of that square is 5 squared, which is 25, and the area of the other two squares is 3 squared, which is 9, and 4 squared, which is 16. If we add the area of the two smaller squares together, 9 plus 16 is 25, which is equal to the area of the square on the longest side. This is called Pythagoras, or the Pythagoras theorem. In other words, the square on the hypotenuse, the longest side, is equal to the sum of the squares on the other two sides. This animation shows that the square on the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares on the other two sides. In other words, 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. 9 plus 16 equals 25. We have a right angled triangle. We know two of the shorter sides. We want to find the length of the longest side, the hypotenuse. We use Pythagoras. We know that the square on the hypotenuse equals the sum of the squares on the other two sides. In other words, 3 squared plus 4 squared, which is 9 plus 16, which is 25. Take the square root of 25, which is 5, which is our final answer. In this case, we have a right angled triangle, sides 5 and 12. We want to find the length of a hypotenuse, the longest side. We know that the square on the hypotenuse equals the sum of the squares on the other two sides. In other words, 5 squared plus 12 squared equals the hypotenuse squared. So in this case, 25 plus 144 is 169. Square root of 169 is 13, so the length of the hypotenuse is 13. In this case, we want to find the length of one of the shorter sides. So in this case, we do 5 squared minus 4 squared and then square root the answer. So 5 squared minus 4 squared is 25 minus 16, which is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. So the shorter side in this case is 3. This is another example of using Pythagoras to find the shorter side. We know the longest side, the hypotenuse, is 13, and the other shorter side is 12. So we do 13 squared minus 12 squared. So in this case, 13 squared minus 12 squared is 169 minus 144, which is 25, and then square root it to get 5, which is our final answer.